Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pitchside Podcast channel, another episode of the Pitchside Podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the PSB. Like, share, subscribe to the channel, most importantly, enable notifications to receive all the updates from this podcast and other content on the channel. Of course, follow us on social media. I'm at PSB on Twitter, Pitchside Pod on Instagram, and you can listen to the podcast on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or any other platform you want to. Let's dive in straight away into recapping what happened on Saturday, of course, and we're starting in England with the FA Cup, but we don't have much time really for the news because there wasn't exactly much news to talk about. Let's start talking about the fourth round of the FA Cup and the action yesterday, and the highlights include, of course, Wolves managing to defeat Chorley 1-0, Southampton knocking out Arsenal 1-0, Bristol City defeated Millwall 3-0 to go through, Barnsley defeated Norwich 1-0 to go through, Swansea managed to beat Nottingham Forest 5-1 to go through, West Ham beaten Doncaster Rovers 4-0, 2-1 for Sheffield United against Plymouth Gill, Brighton facing Blackpool, defeating Blackpool 2-1 to go through, and Man City, of course, having no trouble facing Cheltenham Town, defeating them 3-1. Of course, the games continue today with Chelsea, Luton Town, Brentford versus Leicester, Fulham, Burnley, Man United versus Liverpool, of course, Everton versus Sheffield United, Wycombe versus Tottenham, and Bournemouth versus Crawley Town. Let's move on now, and the focus of the episode is going to be on the Bundesliga once again, and for probably the wrong reasons, as you'd expect from the title of the episode, really. 6 matches took place yesterday. It was Arminia Bielefeld hosting Eintracht Frankfurt. Frankfurt managed to smash them 5-1 away from home. Luka Jovic again scoring another goal, which is probably for the dismay of the Real Madrid fans, who probably thought they should have had this player. They should have had this player at his best, scoring goals for them, but sometimes deals do not work, that's it. Augsburg defeated Union Berlin 2-1. Mainz defeated Leipzig 3-2. Freiburg, Stuttgart 2-1 for Freiburg. Leverkusen losing at home to Wolfsburg 1-0. Hertha Berlin, of course, being dropped by Werder Bremen 4-1. What does that mean for the table before we get into the discussion? Bayern Munich are 39 points with one game in hand. Of course, they're playing against Schalke today. Leipzig 35 points. Behind them, the tally of points is frozen. Leverkusen 32 points alongside Wolfsburg, keeping the top 4. Gladbach 31 points. Frankfurt 30 points. Dortmund, after their defeat on Friday against Borussia Mönchengladbach, are 29. Union Berlin 28, Freiburg 27, Stuttgart 22, as well as Augsburg, 21 for Werder Bremen at 12, Hoffenheim with 19, 17 for Hertha Berlin, for Arminia Bielefeld, 15 for Cologne, Mainz 10, and Schalke, who play Bayern, of course, today, 7th at the bottom of the table. Now, what does that mean for the teams behind Bayern? Of course, that is a discussion that I think we need to have at the moment. Is the race over? Is the Bundesliga title race over? Should we just think of Bayern as the Bundesliga champions for another season and ignore the rest of what's going to be happening in the season? I think yes. I think pretty much that's the deal about it. I'm not saying this from a Bayern point of view. I'm not saying this because I support Bayern. I'm saying this because that is the reality of things. You can't expect any title race no more, considering that the likes of Leverkusen, Leipzig, Borussia Dortmund dropping points here and there and really not being consistent. Every case is different, really. For Leipzig, it's a case of they're not defending that well the last couple of days because 3 matches in a row, dropping points in a ridiculous way, conceding ridiculous goals on crosses and set pieces, which is not good. 2 losses against Dortmund, Leipzig all of a sudden went from being the strongest defense in the Bundesliga to conceding silly goals and not knowing basically how to defend. Dortmund, they are, it's in their origins and it's in their DNA to not defend well, really, because that is not their job to defend. Their job is to attack. Their job is to be enjoyable, be entertaining, and be watchable as a club. That is what their DNA is, and that is how they play with a lot of youngsters, a lot of movement, scoring goals, being offensive and attacking and whatsoever. But they missed the defensive part of the game, and they needed some experienced heads to wrap their heads around the idea that they need to defend. I mean, the match against Mönchengladbach, I think, is the epitome of that this season. I mean, if the game against Stuttgart, where they lost 5-1 at Signal Iduna Park, isn't that, I think the game against Mönchengladbach is pretty much the epitome of that, because you look at the goals they conceded, 4 goals, almost every goal is sillier than the goal before it. The first goal was in a set-piece defending, which, again, Dortmund do not know how to do that. Most teams seem to not know how to defend set pieces. I mean, look across the board, it's not exactly, an issue that is exclusive to Dortmund. Leipzig as well do not know how to defend set piece, attacks. So for Dortmund, it's now need probably to back to square one or square zero. I don't know how many squares you're going to be back to in terms of defending and learning how to really shut down your net and try to concede as less goals as possible, because I'm not going to be Captain Obvious here, but conceding goals equals losing points potentially, and equals dropping out of the title race and maybe out of European spots, which is something that I don't think Borussia Dortmund are really ready for. Or the board of that club probably is not going to be that patient with Edin Terzic if he doesn't make top 4. So I don't know how they're going to be doing it this season, but with all the youngsters they have, with all the talent they have, incredible, the likes of Haaland and Reina and Coco and Jude Bellingham and Jadon Sancho, I don't think that that Borussia Dortmund board will be very patient with him if they don't make top 4 this season. I mean, he's staying at the end until the end of the season, and until they find a new coach, or until they think of a coach that is willing to take the next step and take Dortmund to the next level. Leipzig, again, a case of a team that overall it's not exactly, that prolific offensively, although we know that they can score, and they still can score. The fact that they, scored twice in the last 2 games. I mean, they're still one of the best offensive teams in the Bundesliga, but defensively, not overall, not all the season, they're still the strongest defense in the Bundesliga, but by a tiny margin. It's not exactly 9 goals or 6 goals that what they were conceding like a couple of months ago. Now they're conceding 17 goals, and most of those goals were conceded in the last couple of games. Like in the last 3 games, they conceded 8 goals. Like, imagine that. They were strongest defense by 9 goals only, and they managed to concede 8 goals just in the last 3 games, which is bonkers again for Leipzig, despite the fact that they have some of the best defenders in the world. I mean, Klostermann isn't exactly, or Halstenberg, sorry, isn't exactly the worst defender. Deontay Upamecano, of course, is one of the most sought after defenders. Willy Orban isn't bad, although he looks like a labouring giant, but he's not that bad. He looks like the Leipzig version of Niklas Süle, but still, he's really good sometimes. But it's an organisation. Set-piece defending is really bad for them, as much as the bigger clubs in Europe can struggle in that department. For Leverkusen and for Peter Bosz, it is, it's unexplainable. It's really unexplainable. You cannot pinpoint an exact, error on an exact weakness in the Leverkusen side. They attack really well. They have a complete side, I would say, compared to Leipzig and Borussia Dortmund. Borussia Dortmund might lack a defensive midfielder, Leipzig might lack a striker who can finish now, but I think Leverkusen do not lack those things. They have a complete side, I would say, that can play together, but their problem sometimes is the individual mistakes they make defensively are so bad. If you saw the goal against Wolfsburg they conceded, I mean, it started with a giveaway in the midfield, so you don't think exactly that is to a sort of a bad tactic or a bad shape for Leverkusen. It's exactly because they don't know how to defend sometimes as well. But again, less than Leipzig or Dortmund, they are a complete team. They have all the positions filled, so they don't. You cannot say that they're lacking something forward, for example, and it affects them defensively. You cannot say that for Leverkusen. They have a complete team, but they struggle with focus. Again, they make bad mistakes individually. The defense doesn't exactly seem to hold itself together. But when you pressure them, they kind of, unforced errors sometimes happen. Now the question is, before close down, the question is, again, is the title race over? On this rate, probably yes. And if Bayern manage to make it 7 points after beating Schalke, if they beat them, I think it will be, because there's no chance that Bayern would let this lead slip now, despite the fact that they haven't been at their best for 1 month, 2 months now. They haven't been at their best, and despite the fact that they haven't been performing at their best, they're still leading the table, they're still topping the charts, and they still not just the strongest attack in the Bundesliga, but also still, going to be winning the title probably if Leipzig, Leverkusen have another slip on the horizon. That is how I look at things. Really, I look at things the fact that Bayern, I think, are going to be winning the title. It's just a matter of time before Leipzig and Leverkusen just be content with the positions that they have on the table. The fixtures of the Bundesliga continue today. 2 fixtures, as we mentioned: Schalke versus Bayern, and Hoffenheim host Cologne. A quick reminder of the table: Bayern 39 points, Leipzig 35, 32 for Leverkusen and Wolfsburg, 31 for Gladbach, 30 for Frankfurt, Dortmund again with 29, 28 for Union Berlin, 27 for Freiburg, 22 Stuttgart, Augsburg 22, 21 for Bremen, Hoffenheim 19, 17 for Hertha Berlin, 17 for Arminia Bielefeld, 15 for Cologne, 10 for Mainz, and Schalke with 7 points at the bottom. From Germany to Italy and to the Serie A, of course, round 19 had 4 matches played on Saturday. What an incredible Saturday it was. I mean, it was really interesting in Rome and in Milan. It started with Roma defeating Spezia 4-2, of course, before that on Friday. Benevento drawn against Torino 2-2. Roma defeated Spezia 4-3 in a thriller, literally in the dying moments of the game. They managed to score the 4th goal, of course. Borja Mayoral gave them the lead in the 17th minute before Spezia equalised 24 minutes by Piccoli. Mayoral again gave them the lead, and Karsdorp strengthened that lead to 3-1 by 10 minutes into the second half. But despite that, Spezia managed to turn things around, really, scoring 2 goals by Farias in the 59th minute and in the 90th minute by Simone Verde. 3-3 it is between those 2 sides at 90 minutes. Everybody thought that Roma are going to be dropping points, but Pellegrini manages to make it 4-3 in the 92nd minutes, giving Roma the all-important points that would keep them close to the top of the table with 37 points at 3rd, behind the sides in Milan who were in action later on in the day, with Udinese drawing goalless against Inter, drawing a blank in a game that I think this is one of the games that you need to forget about for Conte. And after the highs, and I showered him with praise really against Juventus, it is back to the pretty much the same way against Udinese. And as much as I liked how he played against Juventus and the lineup that he chose, he went in with the same lineup against Udinese, a side that you were supposed to dominate against, and they did dominate. So why didn't start Eriksen? I don't know. The guy was on the bench. Again, since he was introduced from the bench, that is good for a change. Alexis Sanchez was on the bench as well. He was introduced, Perisic as well. So, I mean, it boggles really my mind, because Inter have a decent squad at the moment. They still don't have Kolarov back, which is a shame. They still couldn't start him in the proper games, but they have a deep squad. They have a good squad of players that they could rely upon, but it looks like most of these players are shackled by the defensive system of Conte, who just loves to play a 3-5-2, basically to the almost to the detriment of some of his players. A draw that, should have been a win, really. They should have taken advantage. It could have been easily something else had they converted their chances, but what we're going to say, 41 points that remain at second, while Udinese are 18 points at 14th. Inter Milan behind AC Milan with 2 points, and AC Milan going as winter champions into the second half of the season, but not with the best of the performances. In fact, probably with the worst performance against Atalanta, losing 3-0 at home. I mentioned it in the review. Of course, I talked a lot about this game in the review, but to just cap it off and just to recap it, I think Milan were fatigued, they were overdone, overworked by Atalanta. There was too much movement in the first half. The second half was just, game management from Atalanta. The substitutions from Pioli were not exactly right. The creativity, of course, was lacking with Çalhanoğlu in the midfield, and Bennacer, of course, as well, to provide that work rate, to provide that cover, to provide enough dynamic in that midfield to make it work, really. Probably it would have been a slightly different game, not easier for Milan, of course. It would still have been hard because we need to credit Atalanta for that win, but I think for AC Milan it would have been a much, much easier game comparatively if they had Bennacer and Çalhanoğlu and those players available. Ibrahimovic was isolated, there was no much service for him. Mandzukic came later on, didn't give a lot really, and I don't expect him to give a lot at 34 years of age. He's no Zlatan. Yes, Zlatan at 39 also, but he's no Zlatan. You cannot have two players almost with the same profile. It feels like, Milan switched to a 4-4-2 by the end of the game, so they played with both Mandzukic and Ibrahimovic as strikers up top, which, is against Pioli's sort of very consistent kind of formation. He always plays with a 4-2-3-1, and even when he makes changes, he always makes sure that it's a 4-2-3-1, but he reverted the formation, and I think he paid the price for it, I would say, because the Mandzukic introduction to the game was before the third goal, was in a time where Atalanta, probably it was right from a point of view that Atalanta were caving in at the back at the time, but by the time he introduced Mandzukic to the pitch and Rebic as well, Atalanta were caving in and they were sitting in the back and trying to just defend and bounce on the counter, and that's what they did because of the shape, because of the change of the shape that Milan had. I think they, instead of making themselves more compact, they opened the pitch much because Mandzukic and Ibrahimovic are not going to be defending. We all know that. They cannot be returning to defending, so you lost already 2 players, and when you lose 2 players in defending against a side that can swarm you with the wing-backs and with the midfielders and the attackers, you really lose in losing battle. And the third goal was 5 against 2. The options for Pessina to pass or to Christian Romero, in fact. Christian Romero, like a centre-half that went all the way in a counter-attack to the opposition box and passed to Zapata. The options for him were too much, really. Pessina was on the one side, Ilicic on the other, against, only Paul, Musacchio and Kier. So, in the end, it was a bad performance for Milan, a game to forget for AC Milan. They need to just move on and keep going in the title race. They need to bounce back very soon because guess what? They face Inter in the Coppa Italia on Tuesday, which is a big game. Maybe their minds were slightly off that game against Inter and thinking of the quarter-final of the Coppa Italia, but you could not really have that excuse when you're playing for the title, basically, because you're the leader of the table and you need to establish your authority, so to speak. Fiorentina defeated Crotone later on in the night. Ribery still given assists, of course. That is very interesting for him. Sunday's action, 5 games are going to be played. Juventus versus Bologna, Verona versus Napoli, Genoa, Cagliari, Lazio, Sassuolo. That's a meaty one. to watch. Parma versus Sampdoria. That is the schedule for Sunday in the Serie A, of course. Juventus going to be looking to get a little bit closer to the top of the table, as well as Napoli and Lazio, who would want to stay in that top 4 conversation. Before we go on to Spain, I just want to say that, of course, in the Premier League, Aston Villa played Newcastle in a rescheduled game, and they managed to defeat them 2-0, of course, to go up to 8th with 29 opponents. They still have, of course, a couple of games in hand for them. Move on to Spain now, and I think this, yesterday I think was characterized for Real Madrid by the fact that an emergency coach, again, I think does the bidding for them. I think there's a good story between Real Madrid and emergency coaches. Zinedine Zidane came as one, and he changed, I think, the history probably of Real Madrid. And now Pionte taking charge from him and managing to impress really in his first game in charge. He's going to have a couple of games in charge, I think, until Zidane returns to his place. But before that, Huesca drawn goalless of the area. Levante on Friday drawn against Valladolid 2-2. Sevilla with a hat-trick from Youssef Al-Nassiri, 3-0 against Cadiz. Youssef Al-Nassiri, of course, topping the charts in terms of goal scoring, 12 goals ahead of both Messi and Suarez with 11, Benzema with 10, Gerard Moreno with 10, and Aspas with 9 goals. Sevilla, 3-0 against Cadiz, a victory that sent them to the 3rd place behind Real Madrid, of course, with Barcelona behind them still to play against Elche and still have a game in hand. In fact, both those, the 3 of those sides still have a game in hand to play. Real Sociedad drawn against Real Betis 2-2, and of course in the main event of the evening, Real Madrid managed to smash Alaves 4-1, and this was a game that for the first 10 minutes or so looked pretty scary, I think, for Real Madrid. It looked like it could be the haunting ghosts of the first fixture, where they lost, of course, 2-1 against Alaves, and they weren't exactly there in that game. Hazard starts, and he proves his worth really in this game. Before that, of course, Casemiro scores in the 15th minute. From a set piece. Benzema makes it 2 inside 41 minutes. Hazard makes it 3, scoring his 4th goal, only his 4th goal with Real Madrid in 35 games, which is just incredible. In the second half, it opened a little bit scary with Joselu making it 3-1 for Alaves from a set piece, from a corner. Again, a big club in Europe that doesn't know how to defend set pieces. I mean, can't count me shocked. And then, of course, Vinicius came in for Hazard, who spent 63 minutes on the pitch and went out without being injured. I think that is kind of okay. Benzema added the 4th goal in the 70th minute to make it 4-1 for Real Madrid, sealing the deal on important 3 points, I would say, for them, because it was a game where they dominated. They didn't look that shaky despite, conceding a goal. They needed those 3 points after the losses in the Super Cup and the Copa del Rey to keep close to Atletico Madrid. Yes, it is 4 points of difference, but realistically, Atletico Madrid could make them even further. They could go 7, heading into the next round, and they still have a couple of games in hand, so potentially this could go to 10, 13 points, depending on how the games in hand are going to be played for Real Madrid, of course. But again, the important thing is the victory. The important thing is that they had the strong performance for their opportunities. I mean, Benzema scoring twice again. Hazard probably having the best game so far with the Real Madrid goal and assist. Having again a great performance that he needs for his morale, of course, morale boost for him after the rough period so far that he's been having with Real Madrid. It looks like Real Madrid needs those kind of victories to help them get back some momentum and regain some of the momentum they lost in the last couple of weeks. We're going to be reminding you, of course, with the table of La Liga heading into the day's fixtures. The rest of the day fixtures in La Liga, it will be Osasuna hosting Granada, Elche hosting Barcelona. That's going to be a tricky test, I think, for Barcelona. Celta Vigo hosting Eibar, Atletico Madrid hosting Valencia. That is a game I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Athletic Club hosting Getafe, that is on Monday. And of course, Atletico Madrid are still leading the table, so they will be looking to continue to lead the table. That's it for the episode. Thank you for watching / listening. I was your boy, the HOD of the BSB. Like, share, subscribe to the channel, of course. Hit that bell button and subscribe and enable notifications to receive all the updates from this podcast and other content on the channel. Follow us on social media. I'm at SideBSB with a Pitch Side Pod on Instagram, and you can listen to this on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform. Until the next time, I was your boy, the HOD of the BSB, and I'll be seeing you very, very soon.